Hi everyone, so in today's video we're going to do a multi-part series into 3D modeling Weekend House by Ryue Nishizawa. He's a Pritzker Prize winner, currently an architect with Sana, and thought it'd be a really easy project for us to go through the steps of 2D drafting the floor plan. From there we will 3D model and look at even potentially rendering it. So the first step would be to find some floor plans online and some sections, elevations, whatever you can find. I usually find that the easiest. And from there we can import an image. So that's the first step. We will pull up Rhino here. If you look at the units, I believe I'm in millimeters. It is a metric project, so just make sure of that. Yeah, millimeters. And then to bring in an image in Rhino, you can type in picture. And this is where I have saved some of the drawings I found online, not necessarily the best dimensioned, so I'll show you how we kind of handle that hopefully. But yeah, just kind of diving in. Right now I've kind of zoomed out. I can zoom in a bit. So it's not really to any particular scale, right? So I just clicked on the top left and then dragged it to the bottom right, and then I clicked, and then here's my image. So the one thing I know based on this project, it's sitting on a 2.4 meter by 2.4 meter grid, right? So we see these columns center to center, we know it's 2.4 meters. So that's some knowledge that we can use to our advantage. Other than that, these measurements you can't really read. If you have, a library nearby that can give you access to plans that you can read the dimensions, then that'd be great. In my case, I don't. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. So I will use layer 1. I'm going to rename it to construction lines. And I will make it the active layer. So I'm going to be drafting in it. And basically I'm going to draw these lines through the 2.4 meter column grid. And that will allow me to begin to add some dimension to this image, right? So do the best you can. I'm going to just draw a vertical line through, hit enter, and then I'm just going to copy that over. Right. Notice how it went straight across. I have ortho on, so it just allows me to pull that straight through. I'm gonna be a little bit neater, make that a bit closer to center, right? So that's good. Now we don't know what this dimension is right now, but it's probably not 2.4 meters, right? So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to offset that line by 2400, so that's 2.4 meters, right? So the true distance, this column to this column, should really be to this length, right? So what I can do is type in scale. I'm going to select this plan object, hit enter. My base point will be here, that first line, and then my reference point will be here, right? So column to column. And then my third point will be the actual 2.4 meter distance. So I'm going to click on that. And I think that's, yeah, and then I made a copy, so you'll see, right? So now if you dimension it, between here and here, it's 2.4 meters, right? So that's perfect. So now it's accurately, this image now that we have here is accurately scaled to our real known dimensions, right? Next thing we might want to do is I'm just going to redraw this, right? And then I'm going to offset by 2.4 meters, right? Just going to maybe delete those lines. Then I'm going to right click and do that a couple times. Right click, click, right click, So right clicking will allow you to repeat the same command. So I'll do that coming across. So now we have a nice kind of grid there. And then next I'm going to draw a horizontal line. I'll make sure this is maybe a bit closer to the center. You know, make it as accurate as you can, but it's probably not going to be perfect. That's okay. So I'm going to right click and do that coming down as well. Okay, now that we have our grid, next thing is we can create that outer border, right? So based on what I know about the house, it's a 13 meter by 13 meter grid or overall structure. So if these are 2.4 meters, that leaves us with 12 meters. So these should be 0.5 meters on either side. So if I now offset that by distance of 500, I'll do that. Again, I'll select this curve, right click, and do that. Then I'll do the same on this side and this side. Yeah, it's not perfect, but I think it's roughly where we want it. If anything, this column structure is a bit off. So, yeah, again, I think it's okay if we're not 100% accurate. Okay, so next, what do you want to do? The walls. Let's just call this one, the purple, the walls. I guess we can call the black the walls. Move this out. Walls. Call the purple the windows. Call the black the walls. Okay. So I'm just gonna make sure you have intersection on, so that will allow you to find the intersection of these two lines, and then you can draw a square around that. From there, you can offset that line. Let's say the wall is 100. So that's that. Next we have the columns here. I believe they're, let's say 100 or something like that as well. So if you draw a kind of square anywhere, close. You can rename this to columns. And then let's change the layer. Right? Now we can move that. Right, so I kind of found the midpoint. So move. I used my mid snap on, and then I made sure that smart track is on, so I can hover over the midpoint here, and then it tracks the middle of the square. So now I can kind of go about and add all the columns at those intersections, so I can just copy, find that middle point, and then just copy it all across. Right. If I want to do this faster, now I can just copy that whole row and copy it across. You'll notice that some of the intersections actually don't have columns, so we can go about there to see if there's any that don't have columns. I guess right here, this courtyard does not, so we'd want to potentially delete these. Just hover that. Hover over these two and delete them. You can see there's no columns. There's a column right here. Alright, so we're changing the image to its own layer, layer 4. So rename that to image. And now I can toggle this on and off. And we can toggle on and off the construction lines as well. So you can begin to see how that's playing out. So that's great. Now, turning everything back on. Next we could do the glass, right? So these are the 3 courtyards. We can kind of trace that. We might want to cut an opening for the door, potentially an opening for the window, and or these are, I guess, operable doors and more doors. And we can always refer to the elevations to take a look at that as well. So let's do the glass. I'm just going to make another layer. Make it a cyan color. I'll call it glass. I'll just reposition my image layer up top. So right now, under construction lines, I can always move it out, or use the arrow above to move it up. Okay, so glass, I'm going to draw that out. I don't know the exact dimensions, so what I can do is maybe I'll use the construction lines again and trace that out. I'm going to make glass the active layer. Enter. And then I'll see if I can offset this by some distance. Maybe 100 makes sense. Or maybe 150. I'll delete that, right? And then I'll offset again by, say, 25, just so the glass has some sort of thickness, right? And then I'll do that kind of coming around here as well. To offset this by 150, perhaps, and then offsetting it by 25, so it has some thickness, and then I'll do that again here. Offset by 150, and then offset that by 25. And then I'll delete that curve here. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Turning off the image and the construction lines, we have now our courtyard glass here. So that's good to see. Next we can add the doors and openings, kind of cutting through that. And then after that we can do some of the inner walls as well. Other than that, it's pretty much open floor plan. A lot of these are furniture elements, so it should be straightforward. So I'm going to go back to my walls, and then I'm going to draw some of the lines that make up for the walls. So I'm just going to go around. The openings, here's another one. that. I'm gonna go here. Seems to be aligned with the column of some sort, so I'll do that. Maybe it's the outside of the column. Okay, so we have the opening here, and then we'll move on to, I guess this one I've drawn in just at the outside of the glass. Here I'll draw in the opening. I'll just offset it. Distance, I'll just hover here. It looks about 650, so I'll type that in, 650. Click. There you go. Then just need to make my way, I think we're back to the start. That's good. And then if I just select objects, actually I'll just highlight everything, and then I'll type trim. So everything I've selected here becomes a cutting object. And then now I can just simply trim everything. I turned off the image just to see a little bit better. And then I'll just make my way around. Right, there you go. And then I'll hit escape. And I'll select all my wall objects. I'll type in join, and then that should be good. Alright, turning back the image, next step would be to do the doors. So I can make a new layer, doors, and I'll change it to something a bit more visible, so I'll just do this pink color, and I'll just make my way, easiest way, I can make that active, draw a circle from one end to the next, and then I'll draw two lines, one here, and then one there. I use that to trim, and then I'll hit enter. Then I'll type in explode, and then I can delete that line. So that's one door, one opening. Next is here. So I can draw one line end to end, and this is essentially the midpoint. So if I delete this, actually, I drew a line from the midpoint to here, and then I can draw two circles, essentially here and here, but actually I'll just duplicate it. And then I'll just draw a line, and again we can use the trim command, select our cutting objects, and then we'll just make our way trimming, and then I can delete this. Then I'll join these two lines, and I'll mirror that along this plane, right, so along this axis. So then I'll select both objects, and then I'll just copy it from this point to the end here, and then that's complete. Next we will draw these windows out. So an easy way is probably to shift to the windows. Sorry. It's roughly, let's say 750. I'll hover over the midpoint and make sure my smart track is on, so it kind of snaps here, and then I can hit C to enclose that. I'll just copy this over, and then I can also make a copy here to here. It's a bit short, so what I can do is, I like this command called scale 1D. scaling in one dimension, so essentially just want to stretch it along the x-axis. I can select it, hit enter. Base point is here, reference point here, and then I want to stretch it all the way there. So I think I picked the wrong object, so I'm going to try that again. Scale 1D, base point here to here. I'm just drawing a door using the same technique, and then I'm going to trim. And then I'll use this to trim as well. I'll join this, and then I'll mirror it. So I think that's it. So again, I will hide the construction lines, hide the image, and then you can see there's some extra lines. I can delete this. Alright, so that's pretty good. And then the last thing are some of these interior partition walls. So I think there's a bit of a closet here, and I'm not sure if this is a wall. We can draw that possibly, and then this is for a bathroom, so we can always draw that in. So I'll go back to my walls layer, make that active, and I'll just come across. I have near set, near checked off, so it allows me to just hover along the line, kind of grabs to it, and then I'll just do roughly trace it. Again, we don't have to be too perfect. Offset by, let's say, 100, and then I will join end to end, enter, and then I'll do the same around here. So draw that rectangle, I'll offset by 100, the inside, then I'll just draw that. They offset. It looks a little thinner, let's offset by 50 in this case. There's a couple openings here, so I will see if we can trim that. Let's say 550. Gotta click it, and then I'll draw the other opening. Offset 550. Okay, and then I guess I can right-click, select objects. So I selected everything on the walls layer, and then I'll just type in trim. That'll just make it easier for me to trim that. And I'll trim these inner bits. So then now I can quickly join. I'll hit escape and then join. And then that kind of joins those little wall elements as well. Alright, so there you have it. Very basic floor plan for weekend house. The next thing we could do is add furniture items. Like there's the toilet here. There's some furniture, some floating furnitures here as well. But I think those are details that you could add if you'd like. The next step will be 3D modeling, so stay tuned for that video next. If you liked this video, got some value out of it, make sure that you comment what you enjoyed, what you learned today, and make sure you like the video. If you enjoy these tutorials and would like to learn more about architecture, design, and real estate, feel free to subscribe to our channel and you'll get notified for our next video. Thanks everyone.